Trước khi bắt đầu, nếu bạn đang tìm kiếm sách để học IELTS hiệu quả, thì đây là những cuốn sách chúng mình khuyên dùng. Nó có thể giúp bạn đạt điểm IELTS từ 7.0 tới 8.0. Bạn hãy xem ở phần giỏ hàng trong kênh nhé. Cảm ơn bạn đã ủng hộ kênh.
Section 1. You will hear two friends called John and Anna talking about a holiday Anna has just had on Jackson Island.
Hi, Anna. How was your holiday to Jackson Island?
It was good. There's quite a lot to see. It's quite a big island, really.
Yeah, I was thinking of going in the summer. So where would you recommend going on the island?
Well, the capital, of course, Camford. I stayed there with my cousin.
What did you do there?
Well, actually, I spent most of my time there shopping.
So has it got good shopping centres?
Yes, but they're the same as at home, really. So I did all my shopping in the market, which is great.
What kinds of things are good to buy there?
Everything, but bags and shoes especially. Just make sure you've got cash with you, as most of the stalls don't take credit cards.
OK, that's good to know. Where else did you go?
Well, my cousin and I went to Newtown. She said it was famous for its modern architecture. We only had half a day there, so we took a bus tour around the town. But if I were you, I'd give the bus tour a miss. Unless you know a lot about architecture, the buildings all look the same. There's a museum, though. That's supposed to be good. You might like that.
OK, I'll give it a go.
Then after that, we headed for Golden Beach, because we were going to meet up with an old friend that I hadn't seen for years. But we had to stay in a caravan, as the hotels were all booked up.
Is it as pretty as it looks in the brochures?
Yes, it's very picturesque. We did some sailing on the most beautiful blue sea. It was so clear that you could see the bottom, even quite far out to sea. That part of the trip was great, and I'd have liked to have stayed even longer. I'd suggest staying there for a minimum of 4 days if I were you. We had 2 days there, and it wasn't nearly enough.
Sounds great. I'll put that on my must-do list. Was that the end of your trip?
No. After Golden Beach, we drove into the centre of the island, to White Mountain.
White as in the colour?
Yes. The island's great because you can go from the beaches up to the snowy mountain in a couple of hours. We took a tent because we were going to camp, but the weather was so cold, in fact it was snowing when I was there, that we stopped in a motel instead.
Did you go skiing then?
No, but we tried snowboarding and it was harder than it looked. It looks so easy when you see other people doing it, but it took me ages to get the hang of it. I wish I'd had some lessons, but you had to make your bookings in advance.
OK, I'll look into that. Thanks. So are there any other tips or advice you could give me?
I don't know. Let me think. Oh, one place you should try to visit is this very quaint cafe, which is at the foot of the mountain. It has the best cakes ever. It's worth going there just for them.
I'll have to try those. So what other advice would you give?
Oh, let me think. We didn't really have any problems.
Well, how did you get around when you were there?
We wanted to get a motorbike at first. They're very cheap to hire and great fun to ride as the roads are very good. But it turned out not to be a good idea because the weather is so changeable. You'd be much better off in a car. There are plenty of places where you can hire them, and the roads are well signposted, so you won't get lost.
And presumably I can get a map when I get there?
Well, you can, but they are expensive. It'd be better to get one here before you go.
Great. That's been really useful. Thank you.
Section 2.
OK,
Well, first of all, I'll give you a bit of background to the museum and then tell you about some of the galleries. You probably won't have time to see everything today, so what I recommend you do is go to the Egyptian room first, because it's everyone's favourite place and it gets very crowded with the school parties later in the day. Oh, and I should mention that the photography gallery is undergoing refurbishment at the moment, so while that's definitely worth seeing, it'll have to wait for another time. Now, the actual museum building itself is quite interesting. It was designed by a local architect called William Craven in the 19th century, at a time when the city was developing rapidly, with new factories to cope with the expansion of the textile industry. The museum's built in a very similar style to the railway station, which was constructed at around the same time. That was designed by another architect, but William Craven did also provide the plans for the town hall, which was built just a few years later. Construction of the museum began in 1888 with a large team of carpenters, stonemasons, and builders. Then, in recent years, it's been extensively refurbished. The lovely big windows have been retained to let the daylight flood in, but the award-winning part of the project was the restoration of the area around the central hall. In particular, the beautiful wrought iron staircase, which was brought back to its former glory. Unfortunately, the museum's original tiled floor had to be replaced with new tiles of a similar design. It was a very expensive project, and since we don't charge admission fees, we had to find other ways of funding it. We did get some money from the Department of Culture at national level, but we had even more generous support from companies and industries here in the city who were our main benefactors. However, we do also depend on donations from people living in the area for the ongoing maintenance of the building. So, how will the museum mainly be spending its money in the next 5 years? We already work with schools and colleges, helping people get a better understanding of all the creative disciplines. We consider the most important part of our work the restoration of the valuable historical objects we are lucky enough to have in our possession, and this will continue to be where the most funding is allocated. Of course, it would be wonderful to purchase new objects for the museum, but we simply don't have the space at the moment. Well, we do hope you enjoy your day today, but if you would like to learn more about our exhibits on display here, I suggest you come to one of the Saturday morning lectures which are given every month by one of our team of experts. Of course, you can pick up leaflets about the exhibits and most of the galleries too, but you'll only get a basic introduction from those. We're also working to update our website so that it provides more background on the exhibits, but that's still at the planning stage. Okay, now let me just tell you a bit about what's on at the moment. Well, we're very well known for our collection of 18th century paintings, both oils and watercolours. Some of these are English landscapes and portraits, but we also have paintings by other European artists who were working during this period. If you're interested in art that's a bit nearer home, the Farnley collection is a set of drawings by Paul Farnley. He was born in Ireland, but he came to work here in the city in the early 20th century and then made it his home. He worked in a factory but spent his spare time drawing the buildings and urban landscape of the city, and his work has now been collected and displayed here. On a more practical note, we have a display of kitchen appliances which might interest you. These are the sorts of things you wouldn't normally expect to see in a museum. There's an electric potato peeler from the 1970s, which sold really well at the time, but no one's got one now. There are lots of other similar appliances which must have seemed like great ideas at the time, but which never took off. You might also like to visit the fashion gallery. This is an exhibition which is running for the next few weeks only and shows men's and women's fashion from 1900 to 2000, including some of the famous designers of the time. Okay, so if anyone's got any questions, follow me over.
Section 3. You will hear two students called Tom and Bella attending the third meeting of the after-school club. They are talking with their professor about the furniture company.
Before we start, Tom and Bella, thanks for coming in today to talk about the key case studies that will help you to understand your classwork better. Now, I hope you've read the notes I gave you last week on the furniture company Willows. As this will be the focus of our discussion today, let's begin. Who can tell me what the current focus of the company's business is?
The company used to be very large, with many retail outlets across the country. However, since the recession, there have been fewer people spending money on furniture, and so the company was forced to close all of its outlets, and now only operates online.
Well done, Tom. Bella, can you add anything?
Willows used to produce a very large number of products, such as tables, chairs, and light fittings. However, through market research, they realized that most of their profit was made from the sale of bookcases, so they now specialize in this one product.
Very good. Does anyone know how our department began its contact with Willows?
Did you contact the company, Professor?
No, Tom, it wasn't through me.
Our headmaster saw an article that the manager had written in the newspaper and became very interested in the company. He contacted Willows and arranged for a student to work there full-time during the summer.
Yes, exactly. Does anyone know what the student thought of their time working at Willows?
Yes, he is a friend of ours. He worked as a member of the design team, creating technical drawings of the furniture using a computer. There was a special software that he used, which he said had a bad interface and was very difficult to predict. However, it was very efficient and helpful for quickly drawing up furniture designs.
How interesting.
Yes, it was. We both visited him whilst he was working there, and he showed us around. Unfortunately, visitors were not allowed to access the IT department, but it was great to chat with his colleagues.
Did you meet his manager?
His manager is a very busy man, so he didn't have time to meet with us. However, we were allowed to inspect the accounts, which really helped us to understand the effects of the software on the company.
Well, what an exciting experience. Now, before I forget, next week I'll be conducting face-to-face interviews with each of you to prepare for job interviews.
Can we do it as a group?
I'm afraid not, Bella. I want to give each of you my undivided attention, and there will be too much disturbance if I interview you all together. Plus, it will be more realistic if I interview you alone.
Have you finished writing the feedback on our exam results, Professor?
Yes, I have, Tom, and I must say that I was not disappointed. I am glad to say that your performance has dramatically increased since you began attending this after-school club, and you have both scored above the average. If you continue to work hard, your results should soon improve significantly. Now, back to our discussion about Willows. Can anyone tell me what business decisions might benefit the company?
A new system would definitely benefit Willows. Their system is very outdated. I don't think it would help them to gain more profit. However, the system is capable of doing the work of hundreds of people. This would, therefore, significantly lower labor costs.
I agree. Unfortunately, unless they also replace the machinery in their workshop, the new system won't reduce the production time.
That is a shame. If they can't reduce their production time, they won't be able to increase sales. The answer is to hire more staff in order to increase the efficiency of the production line.
Yes, you have both made interesting points. Now for one final question before we finish this week's session. How will new clients be affected by the new system?
Unfortunately, the new system does not allow clients to connect to the Willows system from home, so they are unable to access their work online. This also means that the system presents no opportunity to attract more contacts, since clients are unable to view it from their homes.
Yes, that's true. However, it could definitely benefit clients who visit the showroom. The system is very interactive and allows clients to easily browse the furniture catalog, which will save them a lot of time.
It's a shame that staff are still needed to guide clients through the online system, as it means that no savings can be made in labour costs. I think the major benefit of the new system is that it enables staff to design the furniture in front of the client, which allows them to get a lot more involved in the design.
Bravo! You've both contributed fantastic points to our conversation. That concludes our session for today. I'll see you next week.
Part 4. You will hear a zoology lecturer talking about a group of primitive animals called gastropods.
Good morning, everyone. In this module, we've been looking at various field survey methods, and now I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the specific organism that we'll be focusing on during our first field trip, and that's the gastropod. Gastropods are invertebrates. They're organisms without a backbone, and they're more commonly known as snails, or, if they haven't got a shell, slugs. Now, in terms of their evolution, gastropods go back a long way. As with other primitive animals, the minerals in their body fluids are very similar to the mineral composition of the sea, indicating that they began life there. And their fossilized remains have been found in rocks dating back at least 500 million years. Looking at the physical features of the gastropods, well, they all have one muscular foot for swimming or walking. This foot is lubricated with mucus, and it's this that leaves the sticky trail that you see behind snails and slugs. They also have an organ called a radula, which they use for feeding. Then, of course, the snails, though not the slugs, have a shell. In terms of their dimensions, snail shells in Britain range from the dwarf snail, which is 1.5 millimetres long, to the Roman snail, whose shell can be as big as 50 millimetres. As well as size variations, you get a lot of differences in the form of snail shells. For example, the majority coil to the right, but there are a few that coil to the left. Then some shells, for instance the plated snail, have regularly spaced ribs, while the prickly snail has prominent spines. There are even a number of species with hair on their shells. Colours on the shells also vary, as do patterns, so appearances are really varied. Okay, let's turn now to feeding habits. Most of you who are gardeners will know to your cost that some gastropods eat healthy plants. But you may not realise that these are the minority. Most species feed on rotting plants, or they eat fungi and algae. Some species eat dead animals, and there are some that are actually carnivorous. They prey on live animals. For example, the shield slug feeds on worms. And apart from their own feeding habits, I should point out that gastropods themselves have plenty of predators. Birds and frogs are the main ones. But there's even an entire family of flies that have specialised in preying on gastropods. And of course, last but not least, I should mention human predators. It was the Romans who probably first introduced edible snails into Britain during the 1st century, and they are still eaten today. In fact, the collection of wild snails for cooking has caused local extinctions of one species, which is also under threat internationally. So there are lots of predators, but to protect themselves, gastropods have often developed special defences. I'll just give you one example. The glutinous snail avoids predators by folding its mantle over its shell and turning itself into a very slippery blob of jelly. Well, turning now to gastropod habitats, most species like dampness and shade. In general, both very hot and very cold weather is bad for gastropods, but dry conditions are the least favourable. Snails cope with this by withdrawing into their shells, and often they form a thick film of mucus over the mouth of their shell to minimise loss of water. Habitats with a long, stable history tend to support the biggest range of gastropod species. So, for instance, long-established forests usually support more species than newer plantations of trees, and old natural meadowland is much better than land which has recently been farmed. And there is a small number of highly specialised species that live in unusual habitats. For instance, the blind snail spends its whole life buried under the ground. It's been reported living at depths of 2 metres, and particularly likes the cavities in old buried bones apparently. But species like these are exceptional. But wherever they live, gastropods are often sensitive to pollution, and they don't thrive in areas contaminated by agrochemicals. This means that they are a reliable indication of how healthy our environment is. Now, at this point, I'd like to consider habitat management in relation.